Ahoy, and welcome. This is Admiral. Wouldn't it be weird if an AoE2 civilization had not 3, not 4, but 5 different unique technologies? Technically, this is the case for the game's solitary and ultra-unique Pastoral Civilization, the Kitanguts, as in addition to lamellar armor and Ordo cavalry, they have unique access to domestication, pastoralism, and transhumance, in a very indulgent decision that exists in a sort of nomad's land of design continuity, with no other parallels in AoE2. Now this is far from the weirdest thing in the non-homogenized and otherwise unpasteurized DLC, The Three Kingdoms, which continues to age like milk. But it is one of the easiest things to improve upon, by making the pasture and its accompanying technologies regional rather than unique features. We've already learned its several unique quirks for the sake of a single civilization, so why not spread that pastoral flavor to other civilizations, and take advantage of all the free real estate for a new category of meaty economic buffs beyond the fallowing fields of farm bonuses. Regional units and buildings are great ways to expand the design space without overloading civilizations with unique units, or going increasingly off the beaten path for unorthodox economic bonuses. And I think the last chieftains made the right call with the settlement as a regional rather than unique building for just one of the civs, by contrast to the pasture. There's even some indication that a larger role for the pasture was intended, or at least considered, as originally its efficiency made it more of a side grade to a farm. And the Kitanguts had an additional specific bonus for their herders. The obvious contenders from a historical and thematic perspective are the Huns, Mongols, and Cumans, and you can make the argument for Tatars, Turks, Magyars, and even some other civilizations depending on which era of their development you want to emphasize. Of course, this is not strictly necessary, and would be slightly disruptive to the current gameplay of those civilizations, even if the base pasture was modified to become more like a farm, and if the Khitans were given a work rate increase as before. However, I do think it's worth the trouble, and have seen a ton of support for it from the community. And of course, pastoralism was prominent in other potential future civilizations in and beyond the Asian steppes, including the Tibetans, Tanguts, and Khazars, in African civilizations like the Kanembu and Somalis, in American cultures like the Tiwanaku or Koyas, and even European groups like the Vlachs or Swiss. If you wanted to push it, you could even introduce a pasture variant for farm animals, like a pig farm, which I find intriguing, although ultimately unnecessary. Now obviously, not every civilization that could get pastures needs a bonus for them, just as most civilizations have farms without any particular bonus. Mongols especially don't need any further economic advantage, so the current pasture would need to be toned down to the point that it's more approximate to a regional farm variant or side grade, rather than a distinct economic bonus. Perhaps the pasture hub as a drop-off point could even be a unique Khitan bonus, with other civilizations needing to drop food off at the town center or mill. Returning to Mongols, I don't hate the idea of a small flavor buff for the Nomads technology, such as Pastures providing housing space, or receiving a token discount or refund when a pasture is exhausted. A similar case goes for Huns, who I think should receive pastures, but without any particular bonus. Though of course that's always on the table if ever needed to bring them up to speed against newer civilizations. The Cumans don't need much if anything, but are a little lower on the scale as far as win rates, and I do like an idea I saw for them of allowing villagers to garrison in pastures, or I might just consider extending their palisade wall hit point bonus to pastures. As far as new pasture civilizations, we have a lot more opportunity for unique pasture bonuses without the constraints of existing designs, although of course not all pasture civs, old or new, need bonuses. But let's consider some of the more interesting options. Nearly everything that has been done with farms would apply here, and would technically be unique. Free upgrades, more effective upgrades, herders generating small amounts of gold, cheaper pastures, faster working herders, or even something like the full arc bonus of instantly receiving some food when a pasture is built, although that would feel a little strange given the other more intuitive options. The only thing that doesn't really apply is the Khmer bonus, as pastures already have built-in drop sites. Again, unless we make that a unique Khitan feature. One thing I want to focus on is herders with greater carry capacity. This is already a mild bonus for Aztec farmers that have +3 carry, but is even more impactful for Aztec villagers that take over a pasture, as it doubles the lower herder carry capacity from 3 to 6, and has the same effect on carry capacity that another civilization needs both wheelbarrow and handcart to unlock. Before those upgrades, Aztec herders effectively work about 15% faster than other civilizations. If we were to take this further with a herder-specific bonus for a hypothetical pasture civilization, and give them a base carry capacity of 8, that would correspond to about a 20% faster work rate. A wilder idea is having pastures be more productive or efficient when they are farther away from other pastures. This would represent the value of grazing land, make map control more important beyond the natural resources, and give you an incentive to build your town in a way that actually resembles a dispersed herding settlement, rather than a modern factory farm. Bonus points for combining this bonus with the ability to garrison inside the pasture hub. There's also the ability to let additional villagers work on a pasture, which isn't very significant over the long term beyond having a more compact food economy, but it does let you get more villagers working early on with less investment, where for 3 villagers on a pasture, it's about a 2-ton farm level of wood investment per villager. Although of course you'll have to rebuild them more often, so it's not ultimately a discount. There's also the prospect of pastures either spawning military units when built, or training them, which I've used on a mod civilization before. One idea I like is having packed pastures that spawn from mills or town centers on age-ups, as a civilization bonus, and which can be unpacked wherever you want. I actually got this to work with a mod, but the issue is, as with any unpackable building, it won't always be centered on the grid the way that other buildings are, leading to some clunky alignments. This isn't exactly game-breaking, but it's awkward enough that I scrapped the idea of mobile pasture spawns from the town center as a bonus for an upcoming mod civilization. But this could be added officially if the mobile pasture snapped to the grid before unpacking. One final genre to mention is a unique variation of a pasture that uses most of the same principles we're familiar with, but goes beyond a standard civilization bonus level of modification. For example, a 5x5 pasture that can accommodate 4 villagers and has a permanent defensive central building that persists even when the animals expire, and which animals can be refreshed internally. Or a large farming estate that accommodates both farmers and herders. These are probably too unique for the base game, and I'm certainly in no rush to see them given the wealth of simpler options available, but it would be fun to play around with this kind of idea in a mod. So those are my thoughts, but what do you think? Should the pasture and its accompanying technologies be officially modified to become regional features, or unofficially modified on the modder side? Which civilizations and bonuses, if applicable, feel like the best fits? Let me know in the comments. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. This has been me perusing potential and pre-existing pastoral peoples for possible proliferation of protein-packed pastures and powerfully productive positive peculiarities. Till next time.